The In my previous video, I spoke of my book, Argumentative Indian Imbeciles, and I'd given a little bit of an introduction to the manner, to why I wrote this book at this particular time, or I published it at this particular time, because, the Indian intellectual, the public intellectual of whom great hopes were held out just 10 years ago, they have cut their own throat. They are derided, universally derided. They seem quite useless. So today, what I want to talk a little bit about, which I haven't looked at in the book, is what would a genuine intellectual, what would a smart person say about India, and more particularly about agriculture, which after all is the biggest employer in the country. And here, there are people, Ashok Gulati, there are plenty of sensible people. Some of them are journalists, some of them are economists, some of them are politicians. Varun Gandhi, actually, to give him credit, he took the trouble to make a bit of a study of agriculture. Of course, he came up with something unworkable. But the question, of course, that India must face is that, look, Narendra Modi, he did his best to push through that farm law. That's gone. And that really means that for the next 25 years, there'll be nothing, no progress. That is the conventional opinion, the received wisdom. And it's true that no a party which has a good majority, no strong leader will be able to do it. But of course, that means it'll be done by a very weak leader at a time of balance of payments crisis. So, in other words, it's back to the 90s. But the possibility of reform for India now does not depend upon having a strong leader, but on having worthless leaders. Coalition governments, which can fall at any moment, prime minister after prime minister, suddenly there is Deve Gowda. People are going, who the hell is he? And he was actually quite he did have some, he was a man of substance. But, didn't speak English, didn't speak Hindi, was completely unknown outside his state. But you can't say that, he did good things. And then, Gujral, who was he? I mean, again, nice chap, but who? Chandrasekhar, my God. Yeah, I mean, Chandrasekhar was quite well known in the 70s, which is completely useless. He's a young Turk. What's a young Turk? But it was that period, starting with Narasimha Rao, there, you start to have, the story is that we don't have any money. And we don't care if we won't be re-elected because nobody knows who the hell we are anyway. So, but, Manmohan Singh, again, he was supposed to be a nobody man, a nowhere man who, it stood for election, roundly defeated. Never actually won an election. He came into parliament through the Rajya Sabha, from Assam, not even from Punjab, not even from Delhi, but from Assam. But you see, Manmohan Singh, with hindsight, he made the mistake of creating an iron rice bowl, MNREGA, so it's populism. It's basically you're buying votes. And now this is the only game in town. Kejriwal, as an income tax official, he's supposed to be against corruption. But what's his solution? His solution is freebies. I'll buy your vote. कितने में बेचोगे भाई? Danda karo. And, so it's, oh, you're a woman. And women, statistically, they do turn up and they vote. I'll give you £1,000, 1,000 rupees a month in your electronic bank account. And as Manmohan Singh found out, yeah, it works once. Because people who've received an entitlement, they do remember, and there is that element of fear that it will be taken away. But by the time you get to the second term, your second term in office, that entitlement is no longer, people feel it's a it is something they take for granted. They're saying, "What's next?" We want more, and there you get the aspirational element. And I think commentators back uh, uh, 8 or 9 years ago, back in say 2013, 2012, 2013, which I think is the period when Rahul was testing the waters and catastrophic defeats in the states. Then suddenly he's going, "Oh my God, to get Congress re-elected, I have to be assassinated so that this is sympathy vote." So, but you see, if you actually look at his speeches, they're not that bad. It's like people are making fun of Boris Johnson's Peppa Pig speech, but if you read it, it's okay. It's just bizarre. There's just some bizarre element to it. And the bizarre element, of course, to Rahul's speeches at the time, what he was saying. Because, he'd go, yeah, I met this wonderful chap. He's a cobbler. And he said, come and see how I live. And I went down with my mates and he gave us chai. He'd draw a little lesson from that. And this is good stuff. It would be great if he's, returning to Doon School or St. Columba's and talking to the kids there and saying, because, oh, wow, this guy went to Harvard, he went to Cambridge, and yet he can talk like one of us. And, he's got a 5 o'clock shadow, he's not shaved, he's wearing jeans, he's a cool guy. And yeah, what he was saying was actually, quite good. And he was sort of saying to the people in UP, in Uttar Pradesh, he was saying, I met the cobbler or the chaiwala from UP, and I think it's a shame that he had to go to Mumbai to earn a living. I mean, that's okay. Basically, he's saying, let's bring the jobs back to UP. I'm from UP. My voters are here in UP. Perfectly reasonable. But the way he was putting it was patronizing. And I think Shekhar Gupta and others at the time, they're going, no, you see, the voter has changed. You see, they're aspirational. They want something more. And Iron Rice Bowl, that's not enough. It has to be aspirational. And, the point about going to Mumbai or whatever is that you're not just going there to work. You're going there to see something new. And it's aspirational. And, you really literally have kids. And it's a fact that if they do well, they could end up in Silicon Valley. India had changed. They could end up anywhere. They could end up in Korea, in Japan, and Singapore, and Johannesburg. Aspirational. So that story no longer had a resonance. And I think more importantly, you see the various schemes like Bhutan, schemes to benefit the landless in the boondocks. The fact is, these are schemes to create a captive labor market. And, this is what's called the the Speenhamland system in the 18th century England, where the people in manufacturing or the slightly more prosperous farmer What he's doing is that he is paying taxes so as to create a surplus labor pool, which remains available for the big farmer. Now, Ebenrega, because big farmers had really disappeared, and anyway, they didn't want low quality workers. But the fact is that Ebenrega was bad for for the farm sector in general, because it's raising the wages, your wage bill, and of course, nobody minds a bit of corruption. But the very way that, because of the new information technology and the way the thing was set up, uh, this was divisive. It became a very divisive matter. Just to give an example, that the present administration, it's tried to say, well, we'll clear the dues of the scheduled caste people first. And that makes sense, because if you believe that SCs have less money, whereas people who don't really need MNREGA, but they signed on anyway, they're more prosperous. That's the theory behind it. But that's backfired, because immediately it creates resentment right there in the village, and SC don't want it, nobody wants it. But more generally, suddenly stealing directly from, MNREGA through, by withholding kickbacks and withholding, that game is not worth it anymore. And you find that even politicians, the local level politicians, they don't mind giving up that very, because it's too contentious, and you'll get some woman, and even if you elderly lady, she comes, she demands, because she's seen it on her smartphone. She knows that, look, I was allotted 100 rupees, you gave me 80 rupees, where's my 20 rupees? And then you rape her and beat her, but then she goes around shouting, I've been raped, I've been beaten. And it's not worth it. The margin is too small. But of course, now what's happening? What's happening is that you're simply straightforwardly buying votes. And the problem here is that the people, the net, the people who pay more into the system than they get out, they stop paying. And you can try to tighten the screws over here, and you can tighten the screws over there, but then you simply get corruption. So the corruption shifts in a different direction. The other point is that what everybody does is that the problem with Indian manufacturing is that you use the LIC's money or the State Bank of India's money, or basically you say, well, you provide the money, we'll pretend to do some entrepreneurship, and there'll be some pretense of work, and there'll be some pretense of, but it's your money. You're using this money to create the pretense that you're doing this and you're doing that, but actually you're just wasting your money. Half the money is going for the appearance that it's all working. So this is not incentive compatible. It's not really workable. But what does it actually do instead? If it's not workable, why have this tamasha? Why have this drama? Why have this narrative? And the answer is, it's because it's bound to crash and collapse. And there's going to be a fiscal crunch. And where that fiscal crunch comes, and the balance of payments crunch comes, and then you'll also have China fortuitously, taking advantage, and 1962 all over again, and Pakistan exporting a few more terrorists. Replay of history. And, maybe gold being shipped off, gold is leaving the country because of IMF, and, so it'll be, so the change will happen by default. And at that point, maybe the argumentative Indian imbecile will be useful. Because you see, foreign direct investment, if the foreigners, and of course, it'll be a tamasha, they're actually using your own money, but it's under their rubric, under their auspices. So, of course, they get a bad name. But they diffuse that by having the Indian intellectual imbecile to go on talking about human rights and this and that. So people get fed up. And they say, oh my God, you know, this is, it's our own stupidity which got us in this mess. But this is the story of the British Arch. Why can't you run your own country? Because you're too stupid. So then you have to pay. Uh, and then you say, oh, but British must now teach us Hindi because we don't know Hindi. And British do. They introduce vernacular education in Hindi, in Tamil, and so on, which didn't previously exist. Oh, British now must wipe our bottom. Oh, yes. If you pay us enough, we'll pretend to wipe your bottom. And so, as in the days of Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the first great English speaking Indian intellectual, he started a newspaper. What was he doing in that newspaper? Ramachandra Guha, the great historian, he pretends that Raj Mohan Roy and Ram Mohan Roy and Dwarkanath Tagore, he pretends that they were campaigning for the freedom of the press. There was no Indian press. It was only an English press, which was critical of the English officials. But what was that criticism? That criticism was that you guys are preventing more and more of us white people turning up in India, grabbing stuff, killing whomever we need to kill, beating whoever we need to beat. In those days, there's also slavery. So we want to come here and loot the country, indigo planting, this planting, that planting. That's what we want. And East India Company was saying, no, because if you do all these things, there'll be a bloody rebellion. Either there'll be a famine. There'd already been a big famine. So we've seen what happens when there's a famine. Everybody bloody dies, 1/3 of the population dies, in which case the rents go down, your revenue goes down. The thing is fiscally not viable. You see, if the individual Englishman loots the country, the East India Company makes a loss. It's what is individually rational is collectively irrational. So, but of course, the English press in India would say, "Oh, the cruel judge, the cruel district officer, the cruel," because they're preventing us from coming and looting the Indians. And Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Dwarkanath Tagore, they spent a lot of money publishing worthless shit. Yeah, they did attack Hindus. That's true because they thought Murti Puja is wrong and so on. Tagore is a Pir Ali Brahmin, so he had a grouse against other Brahmins. And Raja Ram Mohan Roy had fallen out with his own mother. He said, "What the hell are you doing, stupid?" So, and what are they publishing? They're publishing long articles saying, no, you say, we need more British people to come and kill and enslave brown people. But they explained the reason. They said, you see, if the British don't stay and settle here, Muslims will take back power. So at that point, the others are going, oh, right. Other Hindus are going, well, um, because it's true that when Bangladesh, East Pakistan, when it became independent, they all Bhadralok, they ran away from there or they pushed out of there. Or they first became subject to genocide. So, fair point. So, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, he made money. Dwarkanath Tagore, they made money. They were not imbeciles because they made money. But the current crop are imbeciles. They may make a little money, but it's not Khandani, zamindari, not palaces, and, it's not that sort of money. But others have. And the people who have become billionaires, they've set up, each one of them has a university name, they have a few public intellectuals. But they can also sack those public intellectuals like Pratap Bhanu Mehta if they're a little too imbecilic. It's like, be stupid, yes, but not that stupid. You know, हद भी होती है भाई. You know, don't go too far. It's like in Tropic Thunder, the film where the character played by Ben Stiller, he wanted to get an Oscar, so he's trying to do a Tom Hanks. What was it? Forrest Gump. He's trying to do a Tom Hanks and Forrest Gump, but he goes too far. He goes full imbecile. You got to be, a little bit autistic, little bit quirky. You can't be total moron, and he went total retard, which was so he saw by his own retard. And that is a mistake, I think, made by the argumentative Indian imbeciles. But they got paid. I'm the bigger moron because I don't get paid. But at least in one matter, I have exceeded the Indian imbeciles by being stupider. And that's maybe a little bit, come to think of it, it's a bit sad.